Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hey, have you read this book? Today's book is Canton Elegy, written by Stephen Jin-Nom Lee and Howard Webster. When Stephen was just 9 years old, his grandfather organised for him and his 9-year-old uncle to leave Sheki, a quiet town in Guangdong province in China, and sail to America. This was hard on Stephen's mother, who was a widow, and Stephen was her only child. But she accepted that she had to stay in China to look after Stephen's grandmother. In America, Stephen and his young uncle lived in Walnut Grove in Sacramento, California, where another uncle had a pear orchard and his grandfather had a business trading goods. When Stephen was attending grammar school and America had entered World War I, Stephen was shattered when his grandfather announced that he would be returning to China, as he had promised to spend his twilight years with Stephen's grandmother. As a young man, Stephen wanted to experience other places and went on a road trip to Chicago, Minneapolis, and South Dakota. Racism was the norm, and for some nights he had to sleep in the open after being refused a room in many hotels. Stephen enrolled in the University of California at Berkeley in engineering to please his family, but he knew that engineering was not for him. After 2 years, he changed his major to economics, then graduated in 1926. As Stephen began to look for work, he became resentful after being rejected by employer after employer when they learned that Stephen was Chinese. Against his uncle's advice and knowing that there was going to be a civil war in China, he burned his American visa and went back to China to live. There was an emotional reunion with his mother, who Stephen hadn't seen since he was a boy. Soon afterwards, Stephen met and married Belle and worked for various employers, including the Canton Air Force and a bank called Canton Trust. China was mostly under the control of the Nationalist Party, but the nation lost confidence in the government as the price of food became beyond the reach of ordinary people. Corruption in the government was widespread and the economy was in chaos, with silver coins, central bank notes, provincial bank notes, Hong Kong notes and United States greenbacks in circulation. Then in 1937, the Japanese started to attack Canton and other coastal ports from the air. People left for Hong Kong, Macau, and the countryside to find safety. The Chinese army was no match for the Japanese. Stephen left his wife and 4 young children in Hong Kong while he went to Guilin to set up a branch of Canton Trust. However, while he was away, Japan invaded Hong Kong. Having no other option, Belle set out with the children to walk 300 miles to Guilin with little food or money. After months of worry, Stephen found his family exhausted and hungry but alive. After surviving this ordeal, the family tried to return to a normal family life. However, one night there was a heavy storm and their house collapsed. They managed to get to safety, but many people died in the resulting flood. People were becoming disillusioned with the nationalists, and the Communist Party was gaining support. However, under the Communists, many millions of people suffered terribly. Stephen's ill and elderly mother was brutally beaten to death by teenage Red Guards, who believed mistakenly that her son was a nationalist sympathiser. Despite decades of hard work, the war had wiped out Stephen's savings and the family's land and home in Canton were confiscated by the communists. The Lee family decided to start a new life in America, sailing in 1955. They were among the first wave of refugees from communist China allowed into the United States, where Stephen's eldest daughter was already living and studying. Stephen wrote this story as a legacy for his children, so that they would learn about the history of their family and the country where they were born. know that they were loved by their father, and find inspiration and courage from their father's story. Stories like this one need to be shared so that we know what it was really like to experience China's recent history, and so that we don't allow the atrocities of this story to happen again. The ordinary Chinese suffered upheaval from their homes, poverty, starvation, cruelty and death caused by the Japanese invasion, the corrupt nationalist officials, and the extreme political rules and brutality of the communists. I highly recommend that you read this moving story. Thanks for watching.